Hi, I'm Becky, and I wanted to thank you for joining us here at Becky's Bistro. Today, our recipe will be spaghetti and meat sauce, only using the magical ingredient of spaghetti squash. It's so tasty, too. Tastes just like spaghetti. Stay tuned. So these are the ingredients that we'll use today to make our spaghetti and meat sauce. First of all, we'll be using spaghetti squash. So you'll need 1 spaghetti squash that's already washed and ready to cut, 2 14.5-ounce cans of diced tomatoes, 1 6-ounce can of tomato paste, 1 minced clove of garlic, a teaspoon of Italian seasoning, 2 tablespoons of dried parsley, 6 tablespoons of EVOO, and a 1/2 cup of white wine. All right, so the first step we're gonna do is go ahead and get our onions sauteing for our sauce. So I'm gonna use most of the 6 tablespoons of olive oil. Leave a little bit for the squash. And then we're gonna put in our 1/3 cup of chopped onions. And we'll get those sauteing. So that we can put these in with the sauce. And while those are sauteing, I'm gonna go ahead and get started cutting the spaghetti squash. First thing I need to do is just slice the spaghetti squash in half. It is kind of difficult to do, so just be cautious. And that beep was our oven preheated for our squash. You can soften this squash in the oven or in the microwave if necessary, but this one seems to be a little bit more pliable and easier to cut. Okay, so you'll see that as you open up a spaghetti squash, if you're not familiar with it, it's got strands and then it's got seeds, just like any squash. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna scoop those out and throw those away, and what we'll have left is just the flesh of the squash. I use a ice cream scoop or a cookie scoop. You just scoop it out. One thing that I did forget was a bowl to put this in. So hold that thought. We'll put all of these seeds and a little bit of the flesh in the bowl. And then we'll do the other one. Same thing, we're just scooping it out. If you have kids, this is something they like to do, like carving pumpkins. You could do that with your little ones. All right. So you can see that we've got the seeds out of both sides. Put that away. Now what I want to do is take the rest of that little bit of olive oil that we have, and I want to brush it on. Forgot my brush too. I want to brush it all in the cavity of the squash as well as on the outside rim. Just covering it for that flavor and to get it nice and moist as it'll bake in the oven. A little bit of Italian seasoning fell in there. Okay, so I think that's good and oiled up. Let me just give a little stir to the onions for the sauce. And then on the squash, I'm just going to put a little bit of salt and pepper because you don't want to over season this meal. A little bit of salt. All right, so it's ready to go into a preheated 375-degree oven. You turn it upside down so that the flesh side is down. And you want to make sure that you've punctured the skin to allow the steam to escape. And we're going to go ahead and put this in the oven for about 40 minutes. Looks like a bigger squash. And in that 40 minutes, we're going to take the time to make the sauce and brown the turkey. So, next step will be to make the sauce. All right, the next step we're going to do is make the marinara sauce. The first thing that we're going to need is, of course, tomatoes. Those are the two 14.5-ounce cans of tomatoes. The 1 6-ounce can of tomato paste. And we are putting this in the food processor. You could use the blender if you have that instead. Putting in the 2 tablespoons of dried parsley and the 1 teaspoon of Italian seasoning. We're going to go ahead and put in the crushed garlic. Scrape all that goodness in there. And just add a little bit of pepper and salt for good measure. Blend this up, just pulse it a few times until it's the consistency that you like. If you like it chunky, then obviously you're going to pulse it fewer times. That should be good. All right, so we're going to add all of that sauce to this pot. Before I do that, I want to get the onions in there. Add that oil base with the onions that we have sauteed. Sorry, hopefully that's not too loud. And we're going to use that pan to make our meat, cook our meat. And we'll just pour this in. Get all the goodies out. Mix in the onions. And we will put this on the stove. Cover it lightly so that we don't splatter. And I'll put it on low to medium heat just to get it cooked through. So we've got the sauce cooking. The next step is going to be browning the ground turkey. All right, so the next step is going to be browning our ground turkey. The pan is already fairly hot because of the onions that we sauteed, but I've got it on like a medium heat. And we use ground turkey. You are certainly welcome to try different options: ground chicken, ground pork, ground beef, whatever works for your family. I do use the 93% fat free, so it will cook up nicely and not a lot of grease. We'll just brown this up. Again, this is a pound of ground turkey breast. I'm gonna add our one teaspoon each of onion powder and garlic powder. Kind of sprinkle that in. I'm gonna add, obviously, pepper and salt. So my grandfather owned a restaurant for 30 some years, an Italian restaurant, and he tried in my young adult life to get me to cook with him when he would come to visit from Ohio, but I never paid attention, and now I wish I had, because cooking can be so much fun, especially Italian cooking. So we're gonna let this brown up some. Obviously, because it's turkey, we want it to be fully cooked in our sauce, and so we'll just let it brown up. It'll take about 8 minutes or so, and then the next step is going to be to incorporate it into the sauce, and hopefully when the squash is done, that will be coincide together and we can make our spaghetti squash with meat sauce. All right, so we've got our ground turkey browned and we're ready to go ahead and add it to our sauce. I'm gonna turn down the burner so that the sauce can simmer. And we'll put it in the blue Dutch oven. We wanna make sure that we don't get sauce all over the place, so I'll stir that. And then the meat can go directly into the sauce. Give that a stir quickly so that I'll end up wearing all of the spaghetti sauce. Get it all incorporated in there, and then we'll put the lid back on. And let that simmer. Let the meat take on the flavors of the sauce. And then in about 24 minutes, we will come back and hopefully the spaghetti squash will be ready and we can go ahead and make the spaghetti out of the squash. So welcome back to our final step of making our spaghetti and meat sauce. What we're gonna do now is we're gonna take that 1/2 cup of white wine, add it to our sauce, and let that cook down as it simmers. And it's been about 40 minutes-ish. So we're gonna go ahead and get the squash out of the oven. I have my sous chef, Ellie, here in the kitchen with me, so I have to make sure she stays out of the way. All right, so let me just stir that a little bit. I'll go ahead and turn the sauce off. Give that a few minutes. So here's how we do the squash. If you're not familiar with spaghetti squash, prepare to be amazed. You'll notice the skin is now nice and soft. So I can turn it over. You'll see there's some caramelized parts, which makes it delicious. And then you just take from the edge and you just scoop, and you'll see it makes little spaghetti noodles. You can hear that olive oil just a sizzling away. You could also put butter on this if you wanted to, and just use salt and pepper and not put anything as far as a meat sauce on it, and just kind of use it as a side. We'll take this one and we'll go ahead and plate it up in our pasta bowl. Just kind of make it like a little mound of spaghetti. I'm not sure my grandfather would be proud about this. He was definitely more a pasta kind of guy. Well, that and an entire cereal bowl of ice cream every night. All right, so you can see it looks very much like pasta noodles. And then we're gonna go ahead and add our sauce to that. If you are one who likes a lot of sauce, then you are in luck, because this makes a lot of sauce. If you're one who doesn't like the sauce as much as the meat, then obviously you can fix it however you choose if you want more tomatoes. So there's our spaghetti and meat sauce. And then I didn't mention this as an ingredient, but if you are a fan of parm, this is the perfect place to add it. Just shred a little bit of parm on. That's your spaghetti and meat sauce. Thank you for joining us on Becky's Bistro.